Howdy y'all, this is Henry Films bringing you another Red Dead Redemption video. Today's video is going to be a ranking video. I know, it feels like it's been forever since I've done one of these rankings, and it's good to be back. Today, I'm going to be ranking every settlement in Red Dead Redemption 2. So, settlement, what do I mean by that? This is where things get a little murky. You might be thinking to yourself, haven't I already done this video? I did do a video ranking every town. That was my first Red Dead video actually, and I've been wanting to do a sort of remaster of that for the longest time, but I don't want to go back and just redo the 10 towns that I covered in that video. Rockstar and the game's compendium technically only label and recognize these 10 locations that I covered in that town ranking video as towns, but that leaves out a lot of spots that I could have talked about which kind of function as towns in their own right. Places like Butcher Creek, places like Emerald Ranch. And I got tons of comments on that video from people asking why I didn't include those locations and what my thoughts on them were. So I thought, okay, I'll do this video as an update. Instead of saying ranking every town, I'll do ranking every settlement, which encompasses a lot more potential locations. However, the tricky part is, what do I consider a settlement? So I had to come up with my own criteria. So here's what I've decided. It has to be an inhabited settlement of residents and commerce. So one, it has to be inhabited. That means no Pleasance, no Lymphony, no Coulter, nothing like that. People have to actually live there. And then of residence and commerce. So it can't just be like a single homestead, a single house or ranch or whatever. It has to be a building with more than one house, multiple people living there in separate buildings. And then of commerce, so it has to have businesses, it has to have commerce and trade of some sort going on. So with this criteria, I can now include places such as the Wapiti Indian Reservation, the Heartland Oil Fields, all the major ranches, Butcher Creek, a bunch of spots that I wasn't able to include before because the game didn't officially recognize them as towns, quote unquote. I won't be including any of the gang hideouts like Thieves Landing or Hanging Dog Ranch, because Thieves Landing, while in Red Dead Redemption 1 absolutely would fit this criteria, in Red Dead Redemption 2 all the businesses that are there are abandoned, and the only people hanging out there are like bandits, and someone could argue like, oh well, robbing stagecoaches and robbing trains, like that's a business. No. What I mean is these places need to have an actual legal trade going on, so that can be something as simple as a butcher shop or an entire functioning ranch, or like the Heartland Oil Fields or something, Annesburg, a company town. Again, this is all super arbitrary, it's just places that I picked out. Inevitably, I'm gonna get comments of people saying, why didn't you include this? Hey, where's this place? At the end of the day, who gives a shit? I'm just gonna talk about some locations on Red Dead, I'm gonna rank them and give my thoughts on them. That's the point of the video. It's not a definitive ranking, we're just having fun here. If you really want to know my thoughts on a location, drop it in the comments below. If I forget it, and I'll talk about it, I'll try and reply to your comment. Without further ado, let's get into ranking every settlement in Red Dead Redemption 2. Coming in last place, as much as I hate to put it here, is the Wapiti Indian Reservation. This is a location that on paper has so much potential, but it is held back by the era the game is set in and by the constraints of the lore and the story that's going on with the Wapiti. The turn of the century is just too late in America's history to have a full-fledged Wild West Native American village, as awesome as that would be to see. Everyone here has assimilated, they're wearing Western clothing, the culture has died, everybody's depressed, it's so bleak. Of course, this serves a very clear narrative purpose. These are people who have been stripped of their identity, removed from their land, and are actively persecuted, actively hunted. So it works within the context of the story and within the lore, but it doesn't make for a very engaging place to visit and not a fun place to poke around. And also, it's a restricted zone, so you can't antagonize anybody, you can't take out a weapon, you can't even go fast on your horse, you can't even trot on your horse, you're just forced to walk slowly. Again, I understand in context this all makes sense. Arthur wouldn't be trampling over these poor Indians on his horse, he wouldn't be cursing at them or shooting at them, but these are all options that you have available in every other location in the game in this Western outlaw sandbox, so it just makes coming here a little more boring. All you can do is greet people, and they always just have the most fucking depressing responses. They hate you. They're like, get the fuck out here. And it's not even in like a fun, outlaws talking shit way like Van Horn has. It's like just a depressing, like, we know we're all gonna die. Why are you here? Just let us be in peace. We've been through so much. Again, I think it works masterfully in the context of the story. Just when it comes to exploration in the open world, it's not a place that I ever go back to. Hopefully Red Dead 3 follows the trend established with 2, and we go even further back in time so we can have a proper Native American village. Alright, next location is another one that I'm low-key upset to have to put so low on the list, because I do like it, but there's just better spots on the map, and that's Manzanita Post. Now, a little bit of Henry Films lore for you guys. I have relatives in Sweden. I have Scandinavian Viking blood in me, so the fact that this is a Norwegian Scandinavian settlement, I do like a lot. In the same way, I identify with Rhodes because I'm from Georgia, and that shit's my fucking hood, bro. However, Manzanita Post, it's fine. It's a single trading post with some houses around it. And the biggest problem I have with it compared to Red Dead 1 is you can't actually do any trading. You can't buy or sell or do anything here. There's no shop. There's no store. You can't even go in the goddamn building. Like, what the fuck is that about? It's so strange to me. So, while yes, it is a fun novelty to have some NPCs that sound like this, it's a bit of a nothing location, a useless spot on the map. But I won't knock it because it only adds something to the map. It doesn't take anything away, and it's nice to have it there. It adds a bit of fun historical lore to have a spot on the map where you can see some like European immigrants, same way that one mission where you save the German family is fun. I just love shit like that, which grounds it in the period. Speaking of locations that don't serve a lot of practical function because they don't have like businesses but are still cool inclusions for historical immersion, I've got Caliga Hall. Caliga Hall's cool. It's a plantation house. The actual plantation house itself isn't very impressive, but the estate surrounding it is what makes it so cool. Tarantino talks about this in his Charlie Rose interview for Django Unchained, how these plantations, these estates were like small kingdoms and the owners were like kings. These plantation families were like royal dynasties. It's just a really cool spot. Now, like the previous locations, it has no businesses, no saloon, no hotel, no place to stay. And so along with that, this place, while still cool, while still pretty, while a nice, pretty southern plantation home, is just fucking blown out of the water by Braithwaite Manor, which we'll get to later, but yeah, Caliga Hall just does not have as distinct and beautiful of an aesthetic in its architecture as Braithwaite Manor. And so even though both estates serve the same purpose, that being they don't really serve any purpose outside of story locations, this one is just far less interesting. Okay, next up, Lagras. So this was in my Ranking Every Town video, and it came in last place. And again, unfortunately, even with the added locations, it's still towards the bottom of the list in this video. And that's just because Lagras, that's right, Lagras. People gave me so much shit last time for saying Lagras. Lagras doesn't have much going for it. It's tiny. It's super tiny. It's got one business, and it's a tackle shop, which is pretty cool because it's the only tackle shop on the map. I do love that shopkeeper. She's great. I love all the NPCs in Lagras, the kind of Creole, Cajun, Louisiana thing they got going for them. I love that. But still, regardless, it's just so small. And honestly, you only need to go to that tackle shop once to get the lures, and then you're set. You're chilling. But the biggest problem Lagras has going for it is that it's just not a Wild West Western setting. It doesn't have a Western aesthetic, which is fine, which is cool. The same thing I said about like Wapiti with Manzanita Post. It doesn't take anything away, it only adds something. It's only a cool setting that we can add on top of all these Wild West locations. But for that reason, this swampy bayou village setting, it's never going to be one of my favorites because this is a Wild West game. Pronghorn Ranch. Once again, no businesses here, nothing to do here, but it's just so darn pretty. It's so quaint, it's so scenic. Spending time here as John in the epilogue part 1. I know a lot of people shit on that portion of the story, but I personally love it, especially coming right after the chaos that was chapter 6 with Arthur. It's a nice little breather, and Pronghorn Ranch suits that vibe perfectly. Even though it's not super interesting, I will not lie, I do probably have a bit of an emotional attachment to Pronghorn Ranch just because of our time spent there in the story, and the fact that I feel like I know the ranch hands, I know the people who work there, I know these NPCs. I could never shoot up the place like I could like McFarlane's or Emerald Ranch or something. But that fact, and it just being pretty, is pretty much all Pronghorn has got going for it because, once again, like all these bottom tier locations, there's just nothing to fucking do here. Lagras does have a business, Pronghorn has none, but I have Pronghorn a step above, just because it is a picture-perfect Western ranch setting. And Big Valley is my favorite region on the map. It's sexy. Okay, Armadillo. Here's a location that would be probably number 1, if not number 1, number 2, if it weren't for the cholera outbreak that has plagued Armadillo in the epilogue. Because Armadillo, from its name to its layout to its aesthetic, the businesses there, it is the quintessential Wild West settlement. You can't get more Western than this. Unfortunately, however, for Armadillo in Red Dead Redemption 2, there's a cholera outbreak, so the town is dead. Literally, everybody there is dying, coughing their fucking guts out, puking their fucking guts out, counting away the days. Bodies are being burned in piles, they're being buried in mass graves, corpses are just rotting on the sides of the street, swarms of flies all over. It's just a bleak, disgusting, sad place. Interestingly enough, though, this town, which is literally dead, has more businesses than all of the previous entries on the list so far. The Armadillo Saloon is somehow still kicking, and then of course there's the general store with Herbert Moon. So Armadillo hasn't quite reached Pleasance in terms of a town that's become completely abandoned due to some sort of sickness. And then we also do know that Armadillo is going to get back on its feet by the time of Red Dead Redemption 1, where if Armadillo was at the state that it was in Red Dead Redemption, it would, like I said at the start, be at 1 or 2 on the list. It would be perfect, but unfortunately, it's not. The Heartland Oil Fields are really cool. I feel like if us in the Wapiti didn't fuck their shit up in Chapter 6, it would be on its way to becoming a company town like Annesburg. You can't really spend much time here just hanging out, poking around out in the open because the guards are hostile. It's full of hostile NPCs. You're not supposed to be there. But it's still fairly easy to sneak around this place. They didn't make it impossible. And you can just spectate a bunch of really cool NPC animations. You get to watch all the workers doing their thing. Of course, most Red Dead players know this, but like if the oil in the factory drips on you, it actually stains your clothes. That's so cool. I love watching all the workers. I love the sound design of all the machinery. This place is just a really cool spectacle, but there's nothing more to it because there is nothing to do here. There's no businesses. But again, that's not the point. Like Caliga Hall, it's just a story location. But it just so masterfully exemplifies the NPC programming that Rockstar was able to achieve with RDR2. You just get hypnotized watching all these workers go about their routines. When it comes to the actual look of the place, it's nothing special. It's exactly what you'd expect, but it gets its job done perfectly. It's a nice industrial age, turn of the century oil refinery. It's got the tall oil derricks, it's got the company housing, it's got the gross oily puddles surrounding it. It's definitely great environmental storytelling because the Heartlands are just these beautiful, lush, open pastures that you have this parasite, this disgusting poison to the land right in the center of it, pumping out smog. It's great. McFarlane's Ranch. Okay, so McFarlane's Ranch is one of those locations that, like Caliga Hall, is great in its own right, but it is overshadowed by its counterpart, in this case, Emerald Ranch. It also doesn't help that McFarlane's Ranch in the epilogue is a shell of what it is in the first Red Dead. In that game, it's a fully fledged town, whereas here it's still just a ranch. A large ranch, definitely its own settlement, but a ranch. What McFarlane's Ranch has going for it is the aesthetic. It is a perfect Wild West ranch. As much as I love Big Valley, so I love Pronghorn Ranch, I can't dispute the fact that this, like, Texas plain desert setting is perfect. I love the look of the main house. I love the open fenced-in spaces where you just have all those cows, all the livestock everywhere. It's so cool. But finally, I just love the NPCs. They're like perfect Western background characters, perfect looking ranch hands, looking cowboys. And that's one of my main criteria determining how high I'm going to rank something on this list, because this is a Wild West game. So even though you have really awesome locations like Lagras or like Saint Denis, they don't encapsulate that Wild West feeling that I'm looking for when I hop on Red Dead Redemption 2. Okay, Braithwaite Manor. I think every location from now on, even though they've all been good, every spot in Red Dead's good, these are definitely the best of the best. These are my favorites. Braithwaite Manor is stunning. It's of course inspired by the real-life Oak Alley plantation in Louisiana, and that name is fitting, of course, because of that just beautiful long stretch of road with all the trees. Oh my goodness, it is so sexy. That striking visual on its own just puts it above Caliga Hall. And also the actual manor itself is just far larger, it's way more imposing. I feel like it definitely captures that antebellum look a little more than Caliga Hall. And the surrounding estate, I think, is also a lot prettier. This piece of land is just stunning. You have these wide open vistas of just crops right on the coastline, right on the water. I love how there's a little camp or neighborhood of all the workers where they hang out. I love that one gazebo where you meet Penelope in the mission. It's just such a nice spot. All of Braithwaite Manor, the whole Braithwaite estate, is such a stunning location. One of the prettiest in the game. Now let's jump from the most decadent and luxurious spot on the map to one of the rattiest, grossest, and shittiest spots. We're now talking about Butcher Creek. This hillbilly haven captures everything that the area of Butcher Creek represents. Dark, decrepit, redneck. Butcher Creek and all its NPCs, all its residents, they have so much character. Like the Murphy Brood, the face models on these guys are bumfuck ugly and disgusting. The whole place is in disrepair, and it also has even more of a sinister edge on top of just being kind of ratty. There's rotting animal skeletons, there's even human skeletons, human skulls, and body parts you can find around this location. Maybe it has something to do with the fucking scary-ass serial killer pig mask you can find here. Who knew one of Professor Pig's ancestors was lurking around Roanoke Ridge in 1899? This is also a spot like Van Horn, which, while being a settlement in its own right, you could also use, if you wanted to, as a gang camp, like an enemy hideout, because the NPCs are so hostile. You hit one, you shoot one, or even you just antagonize one, and they'll all come after you. So you have this open sandbox to shoot up the place, maneuver around cover, climb up on things. It's fun. I love the butcher station, especially love watching the butcher actually work his craft, because like how the patrons at the Bastille Saloon in Saint Denis actually cut up and eat their food and the food disappears from the plate, the butcher here actually chops up the meat. Like I was saying with the Heartland Oil Fields, just an awesome example of Rockstar's attention to detail. And it's crazy to me that Butcher Creek is not considered a town, whereas a place like Lagras is considered a town. They have a lot in common. They're both in the middle of nowhere. They're roughly the same size. Hell, Butcher Creek might even be bigger. Lagras has that one shop, which I guess makes it a town in the eyes of Rockstar, but they could have easily taken this butcher and made him a butcher. Maybe more of like a specialty butcher, similar to a trapper, where you can get, I don't know, like more specialized meat. Like food maybe with perks or something like that, more so than just like your oregano and thyme stuff that you can put on your food. But yeah, Butcher Creek is great. So much atmosphere, and I actually do spend a lot of time here, especially because it's paired up with Van Horn. The places are super close to each other, and they give off that same vibe of you're unwelcome here. All the NPCs here are fucking scary as shit, and it's a total shithole. But it's a beautiful shithole, and I wouldn't want to have it any other way. Speaking of shitholes, Annesburg. I really like Annesburg. I know it seems like I've said that about every location I've talked about, and that's because I have. I really do like every location in Red Dead. I don't think there's a single bad one. I think they all add something, and Annesburg is a perfect example of that. Of course, I'm going to rank like the quintessential picture-perfect western towns at the top of the list, but a mining town like Annesburg, even though it'll never be a Tumbleweed or Valentine, it's not trying to be, and it adds so much in its own right. This place is depressing, it's foreboding, it's overwhelming, the smog engulfing the atmosphere, the sounds of machinery and industry, and the despair of the workers here. How cool is it that there's this entire mining system, like this cave system that you can explore, and you can see the workers in there chipping away at stone. You can interact with the guards. You see firsthand with the company housing these just horrible working conditions that came with capitalism and industry in this era. Annesburg is just one of the best locations for exploration. They've included so much, they've thought of so much. Everything from the restaurant and bar here being in German because of the predominantly German population of workers that they have. Even the gunsmith, the gun store is owned by a German guy, and he's a fan favorite character. He's one of the fan favorite NPCs. The passion he has for his business and for weaponry, it's just so endearing. It's always nice to stop by and say hello to this guy. I could never rob him. He's such a sweetheart. I love the water, how it's all polluted surrounding this place. It's all oily and disgusting. All the fish that you fish out the water, they're poisoned. You can't eat them or you'll get sick. You can actually go inside the coal refinery. I'm not sure exactly what they're doing here, but you can like go into the factory, into the plant, and see all the workers do their thing, just like Cornwall Kerosene and Tar. And like I said, you can actually go into the mines and see the miners mine in the mine. Mine. So what is holding Annesburg back? Well, like I said when I first began talking about Annesburg, it's extremely niche. It is a company town, and that's its only function that it serves. So it doesn't have a lot of businesses. There's a general store here, and like I mentioned, there is a saloon here, but they're inaccessible for some reason. I get those locations aren't the point of this place at all, but it still would be nice to use. And that speaks for a lot of the bigger issue with Annesburg is just wasted space. So much of this location is taken up by the company housing and by buildings like I just mentioned, which you can't access. The fact that you can go into the cave and go into the refinery, and the fact that those have interiors do make up for this, but so much of the town is just exterior and facade, and that definitely brings it down, on top of the fact that it's just not a classic Western town. So let's move on. Emerald Ranch. I love Emerald Ranch. It is the best ranch in the game. It's the only ranch in the game with a business, that being the fence, and this is definitely my favorite fence, the one I go to most often. Well, I guess I go to that fence in Rhodes quite a bit, but the Emerald Ranch one is the best because, of course, you can also take wagons and stagecoaches and sell them there to Seamus. Seamus I love a lot. We have that history with him with that one mission with Hosea. And overall, Emerald Ranch does have a lot of history and lore too. It's got that saloon that's covered in blood and bullet holes. Clearly something crazy went down here. It's got the house with the girl staring out the window because her father shot one of his ranch hands that she was building a romance with, and now he has her locked up in there. That's cool. That's cool little details that add to the world. It's in a really convenient spot on the map, and it's in a really beautiful part on the map. It's close to Rhodes. It has its own train station. I forgot to mention, Emerald Ranch has a train station, which is great. It's also got neighboring ranches, neighboring homesteads, which is really cool. I really can't think of any issues I have with Emerald Ranch. Obviously I could be like, it needs more businesses, but it's a ranch. No, it doesn't. The fact that it does have businesses is a novelty in itself, and it makes it better for that. I think Emerald Ranch is pretty much perfect for what it's trying to be. Okay, Strawberry. Strawberry is beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. This scenic log cabin town in the mountains is a fan favorite, and I definitely love it too. I think I see more faults in it than other people do, but I still like it a lot. Let's start with the good stuff, the aesthetics. The aesthetics carry Strawberry. It is the most beautiful town. The fancier parts of Saint Denis might give it some competition, but when it comes to feeling Western and still being beautiful and having a specific character that only Strawberry captures in its own right, Strawberry's got it in the bag. That waterfall and creek that goes through the center of the town with the bridges going over it is stunning. The architecture are these ornate, vibrant, log cabin looking buildings, and they're all so stunning as well. It's a very cheery location, and a lot of that comes from it being a tourist town, a vacation spot for the wealthy elite. So it's a dry town too, because the mayor's trying to keep all the trouble out. And I remember in my Ranking Every Town video, I complained about it not having a saloon, which I still do feel like it's lacking. I think a saloon or some sort of restaurant like that would add a lot. But I do like the lore of it being a dry town, and I really like all the lore with the mayor. He's quite the character. But yeah, Strawberry is kind of lacking in businesses. It's got the store, it's got the hotel, and a butcher? Is that it? Oh, it has a post office, but whatever. It doesn't even have a train station, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me for a tourist town. You gotta trek over to Riggs Station if you want to catch a train. I can understand there not being a saloon because it's a dry town. Like I said, I like that lore. But damn, it needs a restaurant or something. Some spot where I can go inside somewhere, get a meal, and hang out with NPCs. Because it really feels like, as a tourist town, a big lounge area is a necessity. A place that kind of looks like the Rhodes Parlor House or the Bastille Saloon, just without the drinking. That would feel right at home here. Saint Denis, come on, what do you need me to say to you? It's the biggest location, the biggest settlement on the map. It's an incredible recreation of 1899 New Orleans. It's a bit compressed. It's not as big as the actual city, but that's just how all Rockstar games are. That's how game design works. This spot is rich with detail and character. I love all the districts, from the opulent French Quarter to the slums. It all still captures that New Orleans soul and New Orleans spirit. The town is so diverse. There's French, Mexican, Italian, Chinese people here. It's one big melting pot. It's a city, so there are plenty of businesses. All that you could want, anything that you'd need, you can find here. Especially having a fence, a trapper, and a place to get your hair cut. Those are all places that it's especially novel to have in a town in this game, because those aren't ones you can really count on like you can like a fucking butcher or general store or something. The horse-drawn carriages and the trolley cars and an entire industrial district, multiple parks, a massive theater where you can see awesome shows. I love that big sign that says vaudeville. That's so cool. The mansion district and all the houses there are so beautiful. And the slums as well are beautiful in their own way, with the humanity you can find there, people hanging out, playing music, dancing, drinking together. It represents the highest of highs and the lowest of lows that come with established industrial civilization in this time. So the only way I can really knock it is for that fact, the fact that it is civilization. It's a city. And this is a Wild West game, and it doesn't feel Western at all. It's the opposite of the Wild West. So it's not one of my personal favorite locations. However, I still think it's incredible, an incredible technical achievement, and a masterful piece of world building and historical immersion. Blackwater. Okay, we're now in the top 5, and so I'm gonna have pretty much nothing but good things to say about all of these locations. Blackwater represents a classic Wild West town that is now in transition into becoming a small city, and it shows that off, captures that so perfectly, especially in this game, in the epilogue, where you can see all the the city hall stuff being under construction. But even aside from that, you can get a glimpse of what was clearly once that classic Wild West town layup, that sort of T cross shape with the long main street that kind of branches off at the end, that's now being paved over with cobblestone and being like a modern day, or quote unquote modern day as in modern in the turn of the century, but it's becoming a far more modern city. It's got plenty of businesses, no gunsmith, which is weird and a bit frustrating. I see no reason as to why Blackwater wouldn't have a gunsmith, but hey, it has a photographer. Who actually uses those photography studios? I never do. Regardless, it's got plenty of businesses here. I love that it's on the water and it's got that port. I also love how much this game kind of incentivizes you to climb around. There's ladders all over the place. There's so many access points for you to get up on buildings, and they're all lined up in a way and connected via these wooden planks and stuff that make it so you can parkour from building to building. It's intentionally designed for you to be able to do that. It reminds me of how buildings are designed, how towns are designed in Assassin's Creed games. But that leads to a lot of fun shootouts you can do perched up and sniping people. That's great. Actually, one more tiny complaint about Blackwater. It feels like half of the town isn't really used. There's one half that has tons of buildings and stuff, but none of them are accessible. An entire half of the town, maybe not half, but a huge portion in between the main street with the theater and the saloon and the post station. There's a ton of shops and businesses that just aren't accessible, and there could definitely be a gunsmith or something there. Oh, actually another complaint. Sorry! Why the fuck isn't there a train station here? You expect me to believe that Blackwater doesn't have a fucking train station, but Armadillo or Emerald Ranch do? What the fuck is that about? I hate that you can't take the train to the epilogue locations. Even in the epilogue, if I wanted to take the train from Valentine to Blackwater, I couldn't. That makes no sense to me. Tumbleweed is so dope, dude. It is on the furthest western edge of the map, and it really does capture the spirit of a frontier settlement that's in shambles on its last leg on the outskirts of humanity. The only thing holding this place together is the hard-boiled, authoritarian Tumbleweed sheriff, Sam Freeman, who is the best sheriff in the game. Watch my video ranking every sheriff if you want to hear me talk about him more, but he's awesome. Unlike most western towns, which I've talked about before, have that classic T shape, that cross shape, Tumbleweed is circular. It's got a circular layout, super easy to navigate. The aesthetics here, they're perfect, definitive peak Wild West architecture. It's got some of my favorite Western visuals in the entire game, from the windmill on top of that cliff overlooking the town, to this awesome red rustic saloon, and it's got that definitive classic corner shape that you see saloons in movies all the time have, where it's a corner building. Tumbleweed's really, really tiny. I could knock it for that, but I won't, because I think that's kind of the point. But the businesses it does have are great. It's got a gunsmith with lodging. It's got a great general store. I love the shopkeeper of the general store. She's awesome. And then even the buildings that don't function as businesses and aren't accessible still look great. They have so much character. The church, for example, that SA office, or even the sheriff's office, which has that really ominous poster on the wall that says closed due to incident. I love that, especially when you take into account Sheriff Freeman's character. His behavior is pretty fucking unhinged, so you can only imagine what went down there. I love subtle world building like that. And the name, Tumbleweed. Oh my fucking god, I love that name so much. I think that surpasses Armadillo and Valentine, up there with some of the greatest western town names ever. It's up there with Deadwood. It's up there with Tombstone. Tumbleweed is so campy and pulpy. That's such a fun name. Speaking about the saloon some more, the inside of the saloon is up there with the Valentine Saloon. Smithfield's is just one of the best saloons in the game. It's picture perfect. Even though it's small, it's fantastic. I also love how the poker table is in its own private room that is locked. It makes it feel all that more lawless, you know? The surrounding environment, the Gaptooth Ridge setting is great. I love all the houses that surround Tumbleweed, those old rustic houses, and it's right next to Gaptooth Breach, which I think is the best gang hideout in the game. So yeah, even though you hear a lot of players say, oh, there's no reason to come all the way over here to this side of the map, I'm on this edge of the map all the time. I love Tumbleweed, I love Gaptooth Breach, I love Benedict Point, and I love Solomon's Folly. They're such fantastic western settings that I am always poking about. Number 3, Rhodes. So getting the bronze is Rhodes. Like I mentioned before, my home, I'm from Georgia. I love this southern setting. Obviously not a big fan of the South in this era. Throughout the 19th century, we were up to some shady shit, but that's history. And history is the perfect way to describe Rhodes. The history of the Civil War, the history of slavery and the two plantation families, this antebellum culture still seeps its way into this post-Civil War society. I just love it so much. Rhodes has the businesses that you'd need. It even has a fence, which is always nice. And I really do love the Rhodes Parlor House. It's not super Western at all, but it's definitely Southern. It has that antebellum, like ornate character to it, which I really dig. The NPCs in Rhodes are a nice blend of like scruffy rednecks and pompous like aristocracy. That cotton mill is a really cool spot. You know me, I've said many times in this video, I love to watch NPCs with routines that do work. I love to watch the workers work in this game, and so you can see a lot of that there. Of course, the two plantation houses are nearby. I've already talked about both those locations, but it still seeps into Rhodes. You'll encounter a lot of grays around Rhodes, which you can always pick a fight with. They're always fun to start shit with. I love how more towards the outskirts of Rhodes, separate from all the white people, you can find the houses of the black families and those workers. Once again, still reflecting the culture of slavery even decades removed from the Civil War. Rhodes is there with like Annesburg. It's just a really cool piece of historical immersion, an awesome spot when it comes to history. Number 2, Van Horn. So Van Horn's getting the silver in this video. This is probably my most controversial take. I love Van Horn. Van Horn is my personal favorite. I don't think it's the best, but it is my personal favorite spot on the map. I'm always hanging out here. I just love how lawless and scary it is here. I love the grit. I love the grime of this place. I love how the NPCs are all grungy. They're scarred. You might find one with like a fucking eye patch. It's so cool. It reminds me of Rango. It's also got this coastal maritime flavor, being a river port town, but it's not like maritime in the sense that it's this pretty New England port town you'd see in like Maine or Rhode Island or something. No, it's a shithole. It's abandoned. It reminds me of a location from Scooby-Doo with the lighthouse and everything. People just stare at you here. You ride your horse and people are sizing you up. They're checking you out. They do not want you here. If you say hi, they'll talk shit back. They are not fucking with you. It just feels so Western. It feels like such an outlaw hotspot. It's got the same thing going for it that Thieves Landing did when it was a town in Red Dead 1. That feeling of swinging open saloon doors and stepping in the room and everybody staring at you with these piercing glares, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So even though Van Horn's on the far east side of the map, it captures that Western spirit so perfectly. I talked about wasted space in towns before, how there's so much buildings that are inaccessible. That is not a problem with Van Horn. Obviously you can't go in every building, but there's so many random buildings in Van Horn that you can go inside just for no reason at all. They serve no purpose other than the details that you can find on their interiors. I love that. It makes shootouts here all the more interesting, and by God, is this the best place on the map to get into a shootout. I think even more so than all the gang hideouts. You fire one bullet, you throw one punch, and you've got the entire town ganging up on you. It is awesome. Finally, I love the fence here. I love his Scottish accent. I love his like classic sailor look, his like sweater, and I love his dog that he has. I love his mustache. He's so cheery and nice, and it's like a breath of fresh air compared to the pieces of shit you usually encounter in Van Horn. I think Rockstar really nailed what they were going for with Van Horn, and for what it's trying to be, it's perfect. However, there is a town, you already know what it is, that I had to put at number 1 as the best settlement in Red Dead Redemption 2, and that's Valentine. Valentine, I love you, we all do. It's the fan favorite. It is a quintessential, how many times have I said that word in this video? It's the definitive Wild West settlement of the game. Everything from the layout, to the businesses and their architecture and the facades that they have, those classic Western facades. I love the giant text painted onto the businesses labeling what they are, like sheriff, drugs. That's perfect. That Valentine Main Street has honestly cemented itself as one of the most iconic spots in gaming history. That street, and Valentine as a whole, is the heart of Red Dead Redemption 2's map. But apart from that, I still love everything surrounding it. I love that camp for all the workers with the theater, the little theater in the tent. The auction yard, of course, is incredible. I love all the homesteads and houses surrounding Valentine. It really is just perfect. The NPCs here, they're perfect. From the pretty damsels to the outlaws and gunslingers and prostitutes. Each business here, their interior and exterior aesthetic, all knock it out of the park. The hotel is phenomenal. Smithfield Saloon, like, are you fucking kidding me? That's a goddamn Western saloon if I've ever seen one. But even the smaller Keen's Saloon is great. The gunsmith, the bank, the general store, the sheriff's office, the pharmacy, like, oh my fucking god, I can't get enough of this place. The cherry on top is that awesome church at the end of the main street up on that hill. It's gorgeous. When you're on the very end of that street over by the horse stables looking eastward up at the church down the road, and you see all those facades of these Western buildings and capped off by that church at the end, it's just peak Western imagery. I love it. The livestock town of Valentine is without a doubt the best settlement in Red Dead Redemption 2, and I don't think a lot of you would dispute me on that. But still, I want to hear your thoughts, so drop your rankings, but mainly tell me what your favorite settlement in Red Dead Redemption 2 is. And with that being said, that's going to be it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Comment below some video ideas you'd like to see in the future. Make sure to subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.